Smithsonian's been hiding the
Yeah.
information. Those are the big conspiracies.
Could be.
Down in their basement, they've got like a 10-foot tall human being.
I
A
mean,
race
there
of
was-
giants that existed, roamed the earth.
For thousands of years, one mysterious story has appeared across civilizations, separated by oceans and time: the story of giants. From ancient Sumer to Greece, from biblical texts to forgotten island traditions, people have described enormous beings with incredible strength and mysterious origins. Among the most famous are the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in ancient biblical writings. According to tradition, the Nephilim were connected to Mount Hermon, an ancient mountain region where the sons of God were believed to have descended. Nearby, the lands of Canaan and Bashan became famous in ancient texts for powerful kingdoms and legendary giant warriors, including the mighty King Og of Bashan. For centuries, these stories were considered nothing more than myths. But one question remains: what if these ancient accounts were inspired by something real? Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and help us reach our goal of 5,000 subscribers. Because far away from the ancient lands of Canaan and Bashan, another giant mystery survives. In the remote Solomon Islands of the South Pacific, generations of people have shared stories of massive beings living deep inside forests and underground caves. Different cultures, different continents, similar legends. Were these only myths? Or are they clues to a mystery humanity has yet to uncover? Imagine a world where, far beyond the reach of cities and satellites, hidden beneath mountains, jungles, and isolated islands, an ancient race still exists. A race that learned long ago to avoid humanity, retreating into places few people have ever explored. Vast underground cave systems stretching for miles beneath the earth. Remote forests where almost no outsiders venture. Places where modern civilization simply ends. According to countless witness accounts, this is not fantasy, it is reality. They claim that every so often, these mysterious beings emerge from the darkness to hunt, protect their territory, or silently observe the humans who have unknowingly built their lives above hidden worlds. If even a fraction of these stories is true, then perhaps the legends passed down through countless generations were never exaggerations at all. Perhaps they were eyewitness accounts. One place where these stories refuse to die is the Solomon Islands, a remote chain of tropical islands scattered across the South Pacific, northeast of Australia. Covered in dense rainforest, surrounded by coral reefs, and filled with thousands of unexplored caves, these islands remain one of the most isolated regions on Earth. For centuries, the indigenous Melanesian people have insisted that giants still live among them, not as mythical heroes from a forgotten age, but as living beings that continue to inhabit the forests and underground cave networks today. Their descriptions are remarkably detailed. They speak of towering figures standing between 10 and 15 feet tall, covered with long, dark or reddish hair, possessing broad faces, glowing red eyes, and an intelligence that suggests they are something far more complex than wild animals. According to local accounts, these beings travel through enormous cave systems, connecting the islands beneath the surface, allowing them to move unseen while rarely exposing themselves to the outside world. What makes these stories especially unsettling is that they are not told as distant folklore. They are presented as recent encounters. Villagers claim to have seen enormous footprints deep in the jungle. Hunters describe hearing strange voices echoing from cave entrances. Families speak of unexplained disappearances, believing that some victims were taken by these mysterious beings. Even more surprising are reports that modern visitors, including soldiers and military personnel stationed in the region, have allegedly witnessed enormous humanoid figures moving through remote jungle areas. Whether these accounts are misunderstood events, exaggerations, or something genuinely unexplained remains a matter of debate. But They continue to emerge decade after decade with remarkable consistency. The most controversial part of the legend goes even further. Some researchers and believers have suggested that the Solomon Islands giants may not simply be an unknown species, but the last surviving remnants of the Nephilim, the mysterious giants mentioned briefly in the book of Genesis. According to this interpretation, these were the enormous beings said to have lived before the Great Flood, a race believed by many readers of the Bible to have vanished thousands of years ago. Mainstream historians and biblical scholars hold a wide range of interpretations of these ancient passages, and there is no scientific evidence confirming that such beings survived into modern times. Yet the idea continues to fascinate people because the stories from the Solomon Islands seem, at least on the surface, to echo descriptions preserved in ancient religious texts. If these traditions are connected in any way, they would challenge everything we think we know about history. If not, they remain one of the world's most enduring mysteries. Whether the stories describe real creatures, misunderstood encounters, or centuries of powerful oral tradition, they have inspired generations of explorers, writers, and researchers to search for answers. Unlike many legends that gradually fade with time, the giant stories of the Solomon Islands continue to grow. New witnesses still come forward, new claims continue to surface, and each generation adds another chapter to a mystery that refuses to disappear. To understand why these stories became so deeply rooted in the islands, we have to go back much further than modern eyewitness reports. Long before Europeans ever crossed the Pacific, these islands were home to thriving Melanesian communities whose oral traditions preserved detailed knowledge of the land, the sea, and the countless caves hidden beneath the forests. Those traditions consistently described enormous humanoid beings living far from human settlements, inhabiting underground passages and emerging only rarely. For the islanders, these accounts were never presented as fairy tales. They were treated as practical knowledge passed from one generation to the next, a warning about places where people should not travel alone. The islands themselves have an unexpected connection to one of history's greatest biblical legends. According to ancient tradition, King Solomon possessed unimaginable wealth. His magnificent temple in Jerusalem was said to contain extraordinary amounts of gold, yet the Bible never clearly identifies the source of all that treasure. Over time, ancient writings and medieval maps gave rise to the belief that Solomon's gold came from a mysterious land known as Ophir, located somewhere far beyond the boundaries of the known world. For centuries, explorers searched for this legendary location, hoping to uncover the secret behind one of history's greatest fortunes. That search reached a dramatic turning point in 1568, when Spanish explorer Álvaro de Mendaña sailed westward across the Pacific Ocean. Guided by old maps and traditions that some believed pointed toward Solomon's ancient trade routes, Mendaña eventually encountered a chain of remote tropical islands rich in natural resources. Convinced that he had discovered the legendary source of Solomon's wealth, he named the region the Solomon Islands. Modern geological studies have confirmed that the islands do contain significant gold deposits, suggesting that the old legends may have contained at least a grain of truth. Yet for Mendaña and his crew, the gold soon became overshadowed by something far stranger. According to historical accounts, members of the expedition recorded stories shared by the local inhabitants about enormous beings living inside caves hidden throughout the islands. These were not isolated tales told by a single village. Similar descriptions appeared again and again, always describing gigantic humanoids dwelling beneath the forests in vast underground networks. European explorers dismissed these stories as superstition, and later historians largely treated them as examples of local folklore. Yet despite centuries of skepticism, the stories never disappeared. every new generation of islanders continued repeating the same warnings: that the giants were real, that they lived below the surface, and that anyone entering certain caves did so at their own risk. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of these accounts is their consistency. Communities separated by great distances, and in many cases with little historical contact, often describe the same characteristics. The giants are usually said to stand between 10 and 15 feet tall, although some traditions claim that exceptionally large individuals reached nearly 20 feet in height. Witnesses consistently describe long, dark brown or reddish hair covering much of their bodies, broad faces with unusually wide mouths, and glowing red eyes that seem to shine in darkness. Whether these descriptions are symbolic, exaggerated, or based on genuine experiences remains unknown, but their remarkable similarity continues to intrigue researchers. Even more fascinating is the way local witnesses describe the creatures' behavior. Rather than portraying them as mindless monsters, many accounts describe intelligent beings capable of planning, communicating, and living within organized social groups. According to these traditions, the giants understand territory, cooperate with one another, and possess a level of awareness that places them somewhere between humanity and the unknown. It is this repeated emphasis on intelligence, not merely size, that transforms the Solomon Islands legends from simple monster stories into one of the most enduring and mysterious traditions anywhere in the world. According to generations of local tradition, the true domain of these mysterious beings lies far beneath the surface. The Solomon Islands are riddled with ancient limestone caves, many of which remain unexplored even today. Some descend hundreds of feet underground before branching into labyrinths that have never been fully mapped. For the people who have lived on these islands for thousands of years, these caves are far more than geological formations. They are places to be respected, and in some cases, feared. Local traditions describe an enormous underground world where tunnels stretch beneath mountains and, astonishingly, even beneath the ocean itself, supposedly allowing the giants to travel from one island to another without ever appearing above ground. Whether these hidden passages truly exist on such a scale remains unverified, but the image of an unseen civilization moving silently through darkness has become one of the most enduring elements of the Solomon Islands mystery. Descriptions of the giants' behavior are just as fascinating as their alleged appearance. Not every witness tells the same story. Some islanders insist the giants avoid human contact whenever possible, emerging only when people unknowingly enter their territory. In these accounts, the creatures behave almost like elusive wildlife, watching from the shadows, defending their homes, and disappearing before they can be clearly seen. Other stories paint a much darker picture. They describe enormous beings raiding isolated villages, stealing livestock, abducting people, and, in the most chilling versions of the legend, consuming those unfortunate enough to fall into their hands. These traditions portray the giants as highly intelligent but dangerously unpredictable, making it impossible to know whether an encounter would end in silent observation or deadly violence. The number of giants said to inhabit the islands varies dramatically depending on who is telling the story. Some witnesses believe only a handful remain, scattered across the remotest caves and forests. Others claim entire clans continue to exist beneath the islands, hidden within underground chambers that no modern expedition has ever explored. Some estimates even suggest there could be thousands living in these vast cave networks. There is, of course, no scientific evidence to support such numbers, but the sheer scale of the unexplored cave systems leaves enough mystery for speculation to survive. It is precisely that uncertainty that has kept these stories alive for centuries. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Solomon Islands legends is not the extraordinary claims themselves, but their consistency. Villages separated by great distances often describe the same towering height, the same glowing eyes, the same underground habitat, and the same unpredictable behavior. Different generations, speaking different languages and living on different islands, continue to repeat strikingly similar descriptions. Whether these similarities point to a shared cultural tradition or to something more mysterious remains open to interpretation, but they have made the legends difficult to dismiss entirely. Consistency, more than anything else, is what has transformed these stories from simple folklore into one of the world's most persistent, unsolved mysteries. If stories of giants existed only in the Solomon Islands, most researchers would likely consider them nothing more than local mythology. Yet similar traditions appear across continents, in cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years of history. This remarkable pattern has led some researchers to wonder whether these legends share a common origin, or whether they simply reflect a recurring theme in human storytelling. One of the most famous examples comes from the deserts of Nevada in the United States. For countless generations, the Paiute people preserved stories of terrifying red-haired giants, known as the Sitka. According to tribal tradition, these giants were violent cannibals who preyed upon local communities until several tribes united to eliminate them. The final confrontation, the story says, took place inside what is now known as Lovelock Cave. After trapping the remaining giants within the cave, the tribes allegedly built fires at the entrance, filling the interior with smoke. Those who attempted to escape were reportedly killed, bringing the legend of the Sitka to an end. The story might have remained little more than oral tradition had it not been for events in 1911. While mining bat guano inside Lovelock Cave, workers reportedly uncovered a series of unusual artifacts. Contemporary reports described oversized skulls, some allegedly retaining reddish hair, sandals measuring around 15 inches in length, unusually large handprints preserved on cave walls, and tools seemingly designed for hands much larger than those of an average human. Much of this evidence has since been lost, disputed, or remains difficult to verify, but the discovery reignited interest in a legend many believed had been forgotten. Similar stories emerge thousands of miles away in South America. In Peru, claims have circulated for decades about unusually large human remains allegedly preserved in museums or private collections. Some researchers argue that skeletons approaching 10 feet in height once existed and belonged to ancient rulers or elite individuals, while photographs of unusually large skulls continue to circulate online. These claims remain highly controversial, and no scientific consensus supports them. Nevertheless, the mythology of ancient Peru is filled with stories of giant beings, adding yet another culture to the growing list of civilizations whose traditions describe towering humanoids. The pattern does not end there. Across Europe and the Middle East, oversized weapons displayed in museums have often fueled speculation. In Wales, stories surround an enormous 64-pound sledgehammer that would appear impossibly heavy for an ordinary person to use. Museums in Iran display unusually large swords and axes that have inspired similar theories. Meanwhile, newspaper reports from the 19th and early 20th centuries described the discovery of giant skeletons in burial mounds across Ohio, Arizona, California, and other parts of North America. Some stories even claimed that these remains were collected by the Smithsonian Institution before disappearing from public view. Historians have challenged many of these reports, and some have been traced to exaggerations or unreliable journalism, yet the sheer number of similar stories continues to intrigue those fascinated by the possibility of forgotten giants. Viewed individually, each of these accounts can be questioned, challenged, or explained through more conventional means. but taken together, they reveal an extraordinary pattern. Similar descriptions, similar discoveries, similar legends appearing in civilizations separated by oceans and millennia. Whether this represents coincidence, shared mythology, or evidence of something still unexplained, remains one of the greatest unanswered questions surrounding giant traditions. Among those who have attempted to investigate the Solomon Islands legends in modern times, one name appears more frequently than almost any other: Marius, a former Royal Australian Air Force helicopter engineer and pilot. In 1995, he relocated to the Solomon Islands, where his life took an unexpected turn. After marrying a local woman, he gradually became part of communities that rarely shared their deepest traditions with outsiders. Over the years, he learned local languages, earned the trust of village elders, and listened to stories that few foreign researchers had ever been allowed to hear. The timing of his work is often considered one of its most interesting aspects. Marius began recording these accounts during the mid-1990s, before widespread internet access reached many of the islands. Supporters argue that the people he interviewed were unlikely to have been influenced by modern online conspiracy theories or popular Western stories about giants. Instead, they were simply recounting traditions and personal experiences that had existed within their communities for generations. Marius eventually compiled these accounts into a book titled Solomon Island Mysteries Adventures. Throughout its pages, he presents dozens of first-hand testimonies from hunters, fishermen, village elders, and ordinary residents. Some claim to have discovered enormous footprints deep in the jungle, tracks far too large to belong to any known person. Others described seeing gigantic figures walking along isolated coastlines after sunset before disappearing into the forest. Fishermen spoke of hearing strange cries echoing across the water at night, while villagers described terrifying sounds deep within the jungle that they believed came from giants fighting among themselves or hunting unseen prey. Some families even connected unexplained disappearances to these mysterious beings. Yet among all the stories Marius collected, none has generated more debate than the account of a woman known as Mango. It is a story so extraordinary that many dismiss it immediately, while others believe it represents one of the strongest examples of local testimony. According to the account, Mango disappeared from her village while she was still a young woman. Search parties combed the surrounding forests and riverbanks for days, but no trace of her was ever found. As the years passed, her family eventually accepted the heartbreaking possibility that she had died somewhere in the wilderness. Then, 25 years later, something completely unexpected happened. Villagers reportedly discovered a woman wandering near cultivated gardens on the outskirts of the settlement. She appeared terrified, disoriented, and unable to speak coherently. Witnesses described her as foaming at the mouth, behaving as though she had experienced unimaginable trauma. At first, no one recognized her, but as they looked more closely, they slowly came to an astonishing realization. The woman standing before them, aged beyond recognition yet unmistakably familiar, was Mango, the same young woman who had vanished a quarter of a century earlier without leaving behind a single clue. According to the account, Mango had been held by giants for 25 years. The story claims that one of these beings had taken her as a wife, keeping her deep inside a network of caves, providing her with food, but preventing her from ever escaping. When she was finally discovered by villagers, she was pregnant. The details that followed were even more disturbing. According to those who witnessed the event, villagers struggled to restrain and calm her because her skin was strangely slippery, almost covered in a substance that made it difficult to hold her. They reportedly had to use rough leaves and vines to maintain their grip. Not long afterward, Mango gave birth to a child that witnesses described as unusually large. with features they claimed were different from an ordinary human. Some accounts suggested the child appeared to possess characteristics associated with the giants described in local traditions. The child reportedly lived until the age of 5. According to the story, villagers eventually killed the child because they feared it would grow into a giant and continue the same cycle that had caused fear within the community. Mango herself was said to have never recovered from the experience. According to the account, she struggled to communicate clearly about what had happened and remained deeply traumatized until her death not long afterward. It is one of the most extreme stories connected to the Solomon Islands giant legends. For skeptics, it represents exactly the type of claim that appears impossible and likely created through exaggeration, misunderstanding, or attempts to create a more dramatic legend. Yet supporters of the story point out that Marius documented specific names, locations, and multiple people who allegedly confirmed parts of the account. They argue that the story also shares similarities with other island traditions describing giants taking human captives. If such an account were ever proven true, and that remains a significant if, it would suggest that these beings were not simple creatures acting on instinct. It would suggest intelligence, planning, and the ability to maintain long-term relationships with humans. It would raise profound questions about what these beings could be, where they came from, and how they remained hidden for so long. For those who believe the Solomon Islands giants are real, one question dominates above all others. What exactly are they? Where did they come from? The most controversial answer leads not to biology, but to ancient scripture, specifically to the mysterious beings known as the Nephilim. In the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 4, a brief but cryptic passage describes the Nephilim, stating that there were giants on earth in those days. The verse has been interpreted in many different ways throughout history, creating centuries of debate among religious scholars and historians. However, one interpretation has remained especially famous: the idea that before the Great Flood, Earth was inhabited by enormous beings of extraordinary size and strength. The most well-known giant mentioned in biblical tradition is Goliath, the warrior who faced David. According to the description in 1 Samuel chapter 17, Goliath stood approximately 6 cubits and a span tall, a measurement commonly interpreted as around 9 feet 9 inches. His armor weighed roughly 125 pounds,